Now, Zack decided to respond to what happened in the way he did. As you see, the police have decided not to take any
Yes,
action. That doesn't change the fact that that T-shirt is unacceptable. And if I was in Zack's position, then I would have apologised.
you would have apologised.
Yes, of course.
First, though, I do want to bring you the latest on the wildfires in Suffolk. They are spreading dangerously close to Sizewell B nuclear power plant. And the Chief Fire Officer of Suffolk Fire and Rescue Service, John Lacey, talked about the difficulty of containing the wildfires earlier.
It is a difficult fire because they're so widespread and your resources are so widespread, and normally with a building fire you can see it right in front of you in one place, whereas this is much larger. So it is definitely one of the more challenging incidents that we've had here in Suffolk, and it is almost one of the largest that I remember in the history of Suffolk also. But credit to all the crews and all our responders, including the police, ambulance, Coast Guard, our emergency planning teams, and the district and boroughs are working really hard together, and there's some really great teamwork going on.
It's the Suffolk Fire and Rescue Service Chief Officer John Lacey. And meanwhile, Wales has just declared its first drought in 190 years. Half of England has been officially confirmed to be in drought. I can talk first, though, to Paul Tompkins, the Deputy President of the National Farmers Union. Welcome to you, Paul.
Good afternoon.
Good to have you here, Paul. It's a really worrying situation. Suffolk is such a hub for our agriculture and farming. Can you just give us a sense of how these wildfires are impacting your members, the farmers of the area?
Yeah, well, along with the emergency services, I want to pay tribute to those farmers out there who are helping assist with the number of fires that we are seeing across the countryside. Not only do they devastate our infrastructure, but also our farmland, and it's a particularly serious issue. We would urge local authorities to use their powers under public orders to ensure that there are no fires lit or use barbecues, open fires, accelerants used in the countryside at the time when it really is tinder dry out there.
Okay, and what about the losses and the damage being suffered by the farmers of this area? I mean, can they recover from the damage that they've sustained so far? Presumably, they are insured for damage.
Yeah, well, of course, insurance exists, but it goes beyond the immediate impacts, doesn't it? When you suffer an issue like a fire on a farm, it's the emotional impact as well, especially if there's livestock involved. So we're seeing numerous cases across the countryside where farmers are having to endure what is really quite new to us,
Yes.
to having to deal with wildfires. They're a growing and serious issue. And when we talk about the defence of the country, as we were earlier, the defence of the country does start with food production and food defence, and water underpins all of that.
It is, as you say, a new hazard, but it's looking worryingly like one that your farmers and the rest of us are going to have to get used to. That is a major blow to the farming community, which already has enough ups and downs to have to handle at the best of times.
Well, you led earlier with the news that all of Wales now joins most of England as officially being recognised as drought. Well, of course, that's going to come as no surprise to most of your listeners and, of course, farmers who have been operating in extreme dry weather for a number of weeks now, and that does bring real challenges to the farm, whether that's having to feed our animals food that we'd reserved for the winter, whether it's more irrigation, watering our plants, or if it's reduced yields of what the corn, the wheats and the barleys that are used to make our cakes and bread that's coming off the field. So that's either bringing cost or financial implications and obviously extra workload to farms. But we are up for this challenge. Farmers are used to dealing with producing food under extreme weather events, but I do know it's so much easier with the support of government, the Environment Agency, supply chains and water companies.
And you say, I mean, look, farmers will deal with this crisis. Farmers deal with whatever comes their way. But as you say, a new one, and it doesn't look as if it's necessarily going to be a one-off, does it? And when we think of farmers, so many of us, we think of family farms. I wonder, is this going to make it even harder to pass on the family farm? Because, well, that tradition is already under threat.
As you say, we just have to look up and listen to the experts and recognise that these headwinds, whether we're calling this one a whiplash weather event, a whiplash response to a drought, is always going to buffer what farmers can do, whether it's drought today, flood tomorrow, a geopolitical event, or the other side of the world. What we have to do is enable ourselves, farmers, to be resilient to whatever headwind comes along. And that is done by collectively working together. We need a joined up government that brings together all those parts of themselves and agencies to ensure that whatever challenges are ahead of us, we're able to be resilient to them and continue doing what we want to do, which is produce the nation's food.
All right, Paul, good to talk to you, and good luck with
Thank you
this
so much.
task you have to deal with. Paul Tompkins there of the National Farmers Union. So now let's talk to Adrian Ramsay, the Green MP for Waveney Valley in Suffolk. Hello to you, Adrian.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for joining us. Difficult times then for your area, for the farmers of your area, but not just for your area.
Well, no, it's not just for my area. This is something that is happening across the country, but the fires in Dunwich, a bit outside my constituency, are particularly worrying. And my first thoughts are with the firefighters who are bravely fighting this growing risk, and with the people who are living or visiting the area. And I'd urge people to follow the advice that the fire brigade have set out in terms of staying away from the area, keeping doors and windows closed. And I know the fire brigade are working really hard and bringing in extra resources to try and get this fire under control. So that's my first immediate concern. But what it does show, along with the other wildfires we've got around the country, along with what you've just heard from the NFU about the fact that we're seeing earlier and earlier harvests and farmers really struggling to produce their crops, we are living in a new climate reality. That's what we've seen in recent weeks from the heat waves, from the drought, from the problems with the harvests, and now the wildfires. And so what we do need is a cross-government plan to really step up to this new climate reality and be as prepared as we possibly can be.
Of course, I completely recognise that you'll have your views on the wider policy implications of all of this, the environmental policy implications, and that is what your party is for. More immediately, though, as the constituency MP, concerned for the welfare of your constituents and the farms in your area, what would you like to see done, to, if anything can be done, to shield these constituents from the impact of a fire like this occurring maybe on a regular basis, starting here?
In terms of the very immediate risks, I don't want to be quick to be commenting on the way that the fire service is handling this. I've every confidence in the way that they're handling it. They are supporting the local community, farmers and the local community are getting behind the efforts both to stem the fire and look after those people in the immediate area around Dunwich who've been removed from their homes. This fire is a bit outside my constituency, so I'm not being kept up to date hour to hour in the way that I might be if it was inside. But what I would say is it does show in rural communities the threats this can have, not only to the immediate population, but as you say, to farmers as well, who will already be feeling the effects of the earlier harvests, of the drought that we're experiencing. And we do, as you suggest, need a wider plan to make sure that our food security is put on a stronger footing. And there's measures put in place to make it easier for farmers to do things like store water on their farms, which is actually not very easy for them at the moment in terms of the way licensing works. And that will help us deal with the fact that there's times of the year where we have too much water, which is also a problem, even in dry East Anglia, and times of the year where we have far too little.
All right, Adrian, grateful for your views on that subject, particular pertinence given where your constituency is and the way that it's affecting people where you represent. I must ask you this, as you'd expect, especially as a former co-leader of the Green Party. You'll have seen the story. The police are not then pursuing the case of the Green supporter who wore a T-shirt showing a guillotine, suggesting that should be the fate of Nigel Farage. But that doesn't make it any less ugly or offensive, Adrian, does it?
It doesn't. That T-shirt was completely unacceptable, and we need to be absolutely clear about that. I'd just pull you up on one thing. I'm not sure there's any evidence to suggest it was a Green supporter wearing that T-shirt. I don't think we know who the person was as far as I've seen. But no, it was a completely unacceptable thing. And particularly in the wake of the horrific murder of Anne Widdecombe, all of us in public life have to be absolutely clear that political violence and even suggestions of political violence are in no way acceptable.
Yeah, look, the precise identity, I hear what you say, but it is associated with your party in a way that you've seen, well, very widely discussed and reported now. Do you consider, Adrian, we heard the review of your leader the other day. Do you consider that Nigel Farage is owed an apology? And do you think that people, Adrian, who hope for decent standards of debate in politics, I'm sure that includes you, are people who hope for decent standards of debate, are they owed an apology? Do tell me.
Well, I think all of us need to be making sure we set the right tone in public debate. We're debating the issues rather than the people, and that's what people want to see. I think a more constructive form of politics, which is what the Green Party's always been about. Now, Zack decided to respond to what happened in the way he did. As you see, the police have decided not to take any
Yes.
action. That doesn't change the fact that that T-shirt is unacceptable, and if I was in Zack's position, then I would have apologised.
You would have apologised.
Yes, of course.
Okay, and just set out the rationale for that, the point you make there. Why was an apology appropriate?
As I say, clearly Zack had no intention of suggesting anything inappropriate. In fact, he didn't notice that image was part of what he was accepting in collaborating with that post. But nonetheless, that is what he inadvertently did, and it is a T-shirt and an image which is not acceptable. So if I had been in his position, I think the straightforward thing would have been to say, look, this was a mistake. I apologise for that mistake, and it's different to the way we need to see politics done.
And so does his blank refusal to offer such an apology, does that in any way let down your party?
Well, Zack made the decision to respond in the way that he did. I and other Green MPs have made clear how we would have handled it if we'd been in that situation.
Have you made that point clear to him?
That as you can imagine, there have been a number of internal discussions.
Yeah. Which I would normally anticipate mean that you express what you have just said to me to the face of your leader, Zack Polanski. Would that be a correct assumption?
I haven't personally spoken to Zack since that time, but I know Ellie Chowns, our leader in Parliament, has, and she has made similar comments to me publicly.
Okay, she's made the point to you that Zack Polanski was wrong in the way that he handled this, and his failure to apologise went against the grain, clearly, of the colleagues at Westminster.
Ellie has set out her view, which is the same as mine, which is that if she had found herself in that position, then she would have apologised. We have set that out clearly. And, of course, there were discussions as a party about how we manage social media. The party's had a lot of benefits from the way that Zack advances his profile and the party's profile on social media.
Yes.
In this case, which was inadvertent,
yes.
I do think that the straightforward thing to do, certainly what I would have done if I was in that position, would have been to apologise for that mistake.
And from what you say now, clearly more discipline, a bit more professionalism when it comes to the handling of social media to prevent recurrences of this kind of thing. That's what you want to see, and you're telling me that's what will happen?
Well, I'm not going to go into the detail of that, and indeed, I'm not around the table of the detail of those discussions that will be happening amongst the party leadership and the party's communications team. But of course, there are always things to learn in a fast-moving political world about how communications can be done better.
Okay, now here's another one. I'm sure you can understand these questions are inevitably going to be directed at you as a former leader. Your voice carries more strongly than others in your party. So I do want to get your opinion on the Green Mayor of Hackney, Zoe Garbett, who wrote to the Mayor of Haifa in Israel to discuss ending the twinning arrangement with that town, and then setting October the 7th, the date, the anniversary of the appalling attacks by Hamas, as a deadline. That surely cannot be appropriate, Adrian.
About this, what I've seen in the public domain today in the way that you have. It does seem deeply unfortunate that the 7th of October is chosen as the deadline for responding. I can only assume that was a poor oversight on behalf of whoever set that timescale. But
forgive me for interrupting. It doesn't send the right message. Forgive me for interrupting you. You'll understand, because October the 7th is a date that's burned into pretty much all of our memory. The idea that it was a coincidence and an inadvertent oversight, that does not fly, and you will recognise that, Adrian, as a politician.
Well, I don't know. Look, when mistakes happen, there can be a whole range of reasons for them. But what I can say to you, John, is that I met with the Jewish Liberal Society of Suffolk in my constituency a few weeks ago and had a really productive discussion with them about the importance of, on the one hand, being very strongly clear, as I am and the Green Party's always been, that we need to have an ethical foreign policy. We need to recognise that the conditions for the people of Gaza are absolutely horrific. We've got a humanitarian catastrophe there where so many people have been displaced, tens of thousands of people have lost their lives. This is an absolute catastrophe that has to be addressed, and the British government needs to take stronger action.
Yes.
And at the same time, we need to recognise that the way that Jewish people feel, and I talk about Jewish people who I know and Jewish people who are my constituents who I've met recently, they're not just feeling scared, they are scared because
Yes.
of attacks we have seen in this country on Jewish communities, which are absolutely intolerable.
Yes.
And whenever I see any suggestions of anti-Semitic behaviour or behaviour that will make Jewish communities feel unsafe, I am deeply unhappy about that.
Okay, you make that point clearly. And again, thank you for joining me to talk on the programme this afternoon. Last question, because I do want to give you this last opportunity on this last topic. If you accept, as you have, that failing to apologise for the appearance of that T-shirt on the social media feed of your leader was a mistake and it merited an apology, well, then setting October the 7th as a deadline for discussing the termination of a relationship with an Israeli town by a Green mayor, that also merits an apology in a word, doesn't it, Adrian? Adrian, the line is maybe uncertain. That merits, I put to you, that merits an apology too. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we're getting a yes. And has that view been made clear to the mayor? Because again, it's something which reflects on the party more widely. Just in a nutshell, has that been done?
Look, I haven't said that. I have been focusing on representing my constituency on local issues today, including on the ones we've just been talking about around the wildfires,
Yes.
amongst other things.
Yeah, there are many things to discuss, but the mayor would be well placed to make that apology.
Certainly on the date, absolutely. There's a wider debate about twinning. I may come down to on a different side of that debate to the mayor, but that's a matter of Hackney Council. But I do think the choice of the date is deeply unfortunate.
All right. Thank you so much for talking to me, Adrian. That's Adrian Ramsay there, the Green MP for Waveney Valley in Suffolk and the former co-leader of the party.